Greetings to you and welcome. My name is Lebo Mashile. I have the privilege of moderating this panel called Is Hair Political? Hair is Political? ? I'm joined by three wonderful poets from different corners of South Africa and the world. Christy van Zyl is a poet, a performer, and a traditional healer. Luleka is the author of Confiscated Beauty. She is a poet, she is a performer, she's also a youth facilitator and a published author. Jamila Roshani is an Iranian, German-based poet and performer. They are genderqueer, they use they, them pronouns. I'm really interested in centering this conversation around where we come from, where we are right now, and where we are going. I think many of us are aware of the ways that white supremacy, racism, heteronormativity, patriarchy have shaped the way that we see beauty, have shaped the politics of representation. So who gets seen, why they get seen, who is seen as beautiful, and also heteronormativity, the way that heteronormativity shapes and confines beauty standards into a very rigid binary. And of course, I mean, beauty is, for women, beauty is a tool of survival. Beauty is a weapon. Beauty is a currency. We socialize girl children from a very young age to be aware of the fact that beauty is one of the only tools, or one of the most important tools that you have as a girl, as a woman, as a feminine body, to be able to occupy space. You can have a million other tools. You can be intelligent, you can be powerful, you can be talented, but if you don't have beauty, and a specific kind of beauty, society will render you invisible. And also, you know, if you don't fit into normal beauty, what white supremacy and patriarchy define as beauty, if you become visible, chances are that visibility will be met with violence. So I'd like to speak to amazing panelists who are also phenomenal poets. We're here because this is Poetry Africa, and I know we have people tuning in from everywhere. I'd like to ask our panelists to talk about the experiences that you had growing up around hair. How were you raised to think about your hair by your family and the people around you, but also by society? Let me start with you, Lulek.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm so happy to be a part of this panel. And this topic is one of the topics that hit really home. As a girl who grew up from a setup that has also deemed her ugly, unfortunately. Although then I always thought it was colorism than anything that did specifically with hair, until I grew up to figure that the media and beauty pageants are kind of feeding us a Eurocentric view of beauty standards that consist of long hair or certain types of weaves that acclaim you as beautiful. And I didn't have all of that. So it was a matter of diverse issues that contributed into me even believing what society said when they deemed me ugly. So when it came to me realizing how these norms that you were talking about of beauty, I don't meet the most of them, I started being political even about my, as you were saying, Uti, beauty is a struggle type of vibe. Beauty is a weapon, rather. That's the term that I want to use. So I started to weaponize my body in terms of my skin color. Like I started loving myself, first of all, and also acknowledging that I just have more melanin, and this is also enough and beautiful. Because if I continued believing, if you look like this, you are ugly, that I wouldn't be having this webinar with you, because of how much that thing has driven me into negativity. So when it came to hair, when I was now beginning to have this awareness of myself and how I'd like to be perceived, or how I'm weaponizing my body even in this world that is able to cancel you if you look a certain way. Like, for example, when those children in school had this quarrel about their hair, and they were supposed to make it straight or tie it
Yes.
in a certain way, yes, I was touched. So that's why even when I wear external extensions, I want those that actually look like my hair, because I do like bigger hair, you know. So even when it's long hair,
Like these, me too.
yes, yes, absolutely. Look at that, absolutely. So that's what I always go for. It just must look more African, more like me. Not necessarily to say that the people that don't subscribe to that kind of notion are supposed to be cancelled or are not African enough. No.
Yes.
They give me that liberty to wear your hair the way that you want, to be to wear your beauty the way that you want. Yeah, but however, for me, the afro is the power, the dreads is the power. So I bring that to the table.
Oh, thank you so much. That's a brilliant way to lay it out from the very beginning. Jamila, can you please share your experience? I think in recent years, we've seen the LGBTQIA movement and community gain so much power, obviously off the back of centuries of struggle, you know, and centuries of activism. But we seem to have reached a tipping point in mainstream culture where people are suddenly confronted with the visual imagery and representation of non-binary people, of genderqueer people, of trans people. We're being forced to learn a new language, you know? What is the experience? What is your experience? As somebody who identifies as genderqueer, you know, growing up, how were you socialized to see beauty? And what was the journey for you to accept how your true gender expression expresses itself, like through your hair? How did you define your own beauty standards?
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. Thank you, Lebo, and thank you, everyone. I'm really, really happy to be part of this discussion. So, I mean, I think growing up in Germany, I think for the longest time I've had this insecurity, not so much about my hair, like as it grows on my head, because back then I had longer hair and, you know, got some compliments for it and all that. But I think it was mostly body hair, right? That was something that I was insecure about, because I would realize like that my body hair is maybe darker than most of my peers' hair and less easy to hide, right? And more visible. Right. And also I think this way of obviously not understanding as a child, not having that language, but realizing as I grow older that is one of the ways how we police bodies, right? Or how bodies are being policed and controlled. What hair is supposed to grow where, who is supposed to grow what hair, right? And how are bodies supposed to look so that they fit into particular norms. So I mean, I think in that way, like internalizing or realizing, first of all, that there's a lot of internalized insecurity, a lot of internalized shame that I grew up with, but also realizing now how I can play with that, right? So, I mean, I can grow a little mini mustache, right? If I try pretty hard, and I think that is something that I enjoy recently more than I used to when I was younger, right? And being more insecure about it. Also, I mean, short hair for me opens these doors of like people being sort of confused sometimes, you know, mistaking me as a man or thinking, you know, not being sure what gender I am, which is something that I do tend to enjoy sometimes, right? But also there's this interesting and sort of funny question that people would ask me often, like, oh, so what's behind the hair, right? What's behind the hairstyle? And in as much as I am queer and I'm not hiding it, it's also interesting because I think, well, blonde cishet women are not really asked that question of like, what's behind your blonde long hair, right? It doesn't carry this symbolic, you know, whatever people see in it. So I mean, yeah, I think these are some of the ways how I sort of experience hair and navigate it. But I think also to answer your question, how how I find myself, or how I came to where I am now, I think it's a constant journey, right? I think I'm still at a point of discovery, and at a point of discovering what I find beautiful, and where I can tap into my beauty, right? And also that, because I think there's a lot of erased histories and silenced histories when it comes to especially people of color, and how hair has always been this marker of civilization, right? To separate genders, to say, okay, we have these two distinct genders, and hair is one of the markers that make it easy to distinguish, right? So once you blur these lines, it becomes tricky, right? But it's also, I think, a form of resistance in a way. I'll leave it here for now.
You raised some very important issues. And I've heard many people of Persian descent, people of Latin descent, people of Indian, Pakistani descent speak about the battle with body hair, you know? And I mean, all kinds of people of all kinds of races. Like, women are not allowed chest hair. And I know plenty of women with chest hair. Women are not allowed facial hair. People are not, hair on your arms, hair on your legs, and this fight that we are conditioned to go through. I mean, let alone pubic hair, I mean, I don't know when it became acceptable for people to not have any hair ever on their vaginas. I mean, so this constant fight with one's body, the constant fight to transform yourself to an acceptable status quo that you didn't design, that you didn't ask for, that doesn't necessarily go along with your values. Policing. Christy van Zyl, poet and traditional healer. What's your take on it? I'm very curious about you also, because your identity straddles cultures, you straddle, your identity is a hybrid identity on its own. You have the beautiful gift of being able to move between cultures. So how did you grow up feeling about your hair? What were you taught to feel about your hair? And how did you come to a place of reckoning and acceptance of who you are?
Ooh, hi Lebo. Hey. Thank you so much to Poetry Africa for having me here. First of all, wow, everybody looks so gorgeous. Hair, right? So I grew up, and my mom was very long hair oriented. She was a lady. She was she modeled her ladiness around British standards, because back in her day, the British standards were the standards to come out of poverty. Né? So we're sitting with our half white, half black hair, half Zulu, half Afrikaans, which does not need relaxing. But because the hair was wild and the wildness was not allowed at school, she would relax it and she would put fiber in it to protect the hair. I mean, we were walking around, I was in grade 1, walking around with fiber all the way down under my bum. Like,
wow.
Hair. My mom said to me, never ever cut your hair. My mom said to me, never ever do dreadlocks. Dreadlocks, let's get satane. So only after 2 years after my mom passed away, I got dreadlocks, only to find that it was situated with my calling. I never ever really had access to my white side of the family, to my dad's side of the family, because they disowned my mom. I mean, they disowned my dad for marrying my mom, for marrying a person. So I've never had to navigate between the two identities, really, because I grew up on my mother's side of the family. I grew up Black. I grew up, like any other Black child in KZN. So I don't relate to my white side in the common context that other people would relate to. But definitely one of the things that came up surrounding beauty was you are not beautiful. You're only beautiful because you're light skinned. If you were dark skinned, you would be ugly. Those are the kind of things we got in primary school. So really maneuvering through the hair thing was spending half of my life with relaxed hair, and eventually, only after my mom passed away, was I able to grow out my natural hair and have dreadlocks, which I had for 10, 11 years, which I recently only got rid of. But it took me up until the age of 30 to have the guts to even cut my hair. You know, my mom passed away when I was 20. You know, it took me 10, 11 years after my mom passed away to even have the guts to cut it, because my mom kept saying, never ever cut your hair, never ever cut your hair, because of those beauty standards of long hair. And being a lady, you must have this beautiful long hair and you must look pristine, you know? And the children of a white man, what are they going to say if you're walking around and you don't have the long, nice, straight hair that your father gave you? You should see it as a privilege.
So the colorism that Luleka was talking about, you know, she thought that this was a gift for you, that it was an asset, a way to move through the world.
Yes, wow. to the extent that even in my identity book, you'll never find an African name of mine in there. I have an African name, but all my names are English: Christy, Charlene, Marcia, and then my Afrikaans surname Van Sale, because in her head, navigating identity meant you need this easy tool, and this is an easy tool for you right now as a child born in the 80s to be able to maneuver through an apartheid world, and we don't know how long this apartheid world is going to last. So to make it easy for you, I'm going to attach everything about whiteness to you to make it easy for you to maneuver the world.
Sure. Okay, so then let's talk about masking. Let's talk about the tools that people have had to use to be able to survive either cis heteronormative spaces or white supremacist spaces. You know, I'm thinking about Black women who, for example, will specifically wear straight wigs when they are applying for jobs, right? So the hair that you wear when you want them versus the hair that you wear when you're already in the door, you know? I'm thinking about people who straighten their hair specifically when they go home for holidays, because they come from families that still adhere to very Eurocentric standards, and you cannot walk home at Christmas or whatever with hair like this. You need to come and you need to look acceptable, right? And the ways in which people are judged very harshly for both adhering to this and also not adhering to this, you know? Maybe I see you nodding, Shamila. Would you like to say something to this topic?
Oh, I was just listening to you and agreeing to what you were saying. But I mean, I don't know. I was thinking just now how, because you spoke about survival, right? And I had this conversation the other day with a friend of mine who is femme presenting, right? And she was saying that she gets catcalled so often. And I was thinking that ever since my hair is short, like that actually, I mean, I'm still getting catcalled, right? But it doesn't happen that often anymore, right?
Wow.
In a way, also hair functions as this marker of, you know, masculinity or femininity, which then obviously becomes devalued, you know, and in a way, I wonder sometimes now if it might protect me to a certain extent. Obviously, you'll never be safe out there, right? But to a certain extent, more than people who appear to be, because I spoke earlier about like how sometimes, you know, people might be confused, especially here in Germany in winter, you know, you're wearing like 5 layers of clothes, and it's possible to see much more than your head, right? So people would just look at me and be like, okay, I don't know, you know, I'm not sure about them, so whatever. So I think that was one of the ways how I recently actually thought about like, oh, it's interesting how, you know, this might also be something that I've never thought about as a protection, but that might actually sometimes make me navigate life in a different way and perhaps a bit easier, because I'm not obviously classified as a woman, right?
You know, South Africa is a very unsafe society. The GBV statistics are quite high. So, I mean, things like, you know, violence against all kinds of people, women, queer bodies, you know, it's rife here. And I've got a very good friend who's non-binary, and one of the things that they say is, as they have grown self-awareness about their own, you know, the evolution of their own sexuality and gender identity, they find that they lean more heavily into the masculine as a form of protection in society.
Hmm.
And the deep kind of questions around, is this, of course, this is an aspect of who I am, but is this, how would I express myself in a society where I felt safe?
Yeah,
you know,
I really wonder. I don't think we can ever know.
Yeah. Luleka, the ways in which we mask in order to fit in, the things that Black women have to do. I mean, raised colorism earlier, you know, and I mean, one of the things that, and which I think is spot on, is quite apt, you know, and I think we kind of came full circle listening to Christy's testimony, her story, you know. But your issue, the issue of colorism also makes me think of personalities, people like Kelly Kumalo or Kanyimbao, who become heavily criticized for lightening their skin, right? As though we are not a society that privileges light skin. You know, so the ways that women are forced to conform and wear masks, the ways that queer are forced to conform and wear masks in order to survive.
I think what was frustrating for me, Gakulu, when I was growing up, is that I have the personality that does not easily conform, you know. So it was frustrating when I was being cancelled for so many things, because you see, something that is also visible in my face is my half tooth that broke when I was in boarding school when I was 8 years. You know, I fell, and it just added on to the things that were awful when people were saying to me about my identity. And I have deliberately decided not to make it full, so that people can get and still be okay and still be a proper woman.
Yeah.
So for me, what you're saying particularly about masking is one of the most frustrating things I had when I wasn't comfortable with myself specifically, because I have this thing of wanting to show myself, and then now everyone is, okay, not everyone, but most people are having so many things that are canceling me and canceling things that I'm not even able to change. You know, I, for example, with big hair today, just 2 weeks ago, I had very short hair because I went bald about 6 months ago, type of vibe. So I'm that kind of person that likes changing, but also just being me. So if I want to go bald tomorrow, I don't want anyone who would say no to that, because this is my body, this is how I want to identify myself as. Although I did at some point face give a resistance over doing what I actually want to do, because I understand how society is going to perceive me, and with this dark skin and not already meeting the standards, I'm going to be deemed a man. Not necessarily because men are not beautiful, but in this case, it would translate as not beautiful if you are seen to be looking like a man. So if I go bald, already unsaid, not necessarily in a way that says men are not, appealing or not what, but because you are not looking like a woman, you are not looking the way that a woman is expected to look, So it's been a bit of a quarrel for me, especially when I had not embarked on a journey of loving myself, because we can't say we've fully healed, we've fully loved ourselves, as Chantal, that this is still a space of finding oneself type of vibe. So the conflict was there, that I don't want to do these things for. I want to do them for me. If I want to wear short skirts, I'm not wearing short skirts to impress men. I'm wearing them because I like how they look on me.
Exactly.
So the same way I want to wear my hair, the same way if I want to put makeup on, I'm putting makeup on. I'm not hiding myself. And if I'm not putting makeup on, this is how I want to appear as, So I think when it comes to masking, those were the things that would just flood my mind. And sometimes I would subscribe to what society wants, but most of the time I fight.
I'm so glad to hear you say that sometimes we do conform and we do go along,
Yeah.
Sometimes we do resist. But really, the point of being in a marginalized body, in a body that is oppressed by cis heteronormativity, white supremacy, patriarchy. I keep coming back to these things, and capitalism, because all of this, you know, is interconnected with capitalism, right? The point of being an oppressed body is that you constantly have to interrogate. You're never right. If you conform and you do what society expects of you, you know, if society is saying that if society says, and as it has relentlessly said since slavery, that dark-skinned Black women are not women, dark-skinned Black women are masculine, dark-skinned Black women are not beautiful, then no matter how you express yourself, whether you are expressing yourself in a way to try to go against the popular narrative, you still are you wrong, you're problematic because you're going along with the dominant culture. If you resist the narrative, then you are also you have to deal with the backlash of resisting and be resilient enough to go on your own. So there is, you know, these systems, they leave us with these forms of oppression. They leave us with no options. There is no right, you know? You're gonna piss somebody off no matter what it is that you do. So you might as well make yourself happy.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, you raised the subject of the spirituality of hair, Lulek, just before we started the conversation, which I think is a very important subject. I want to throw it over to Christy first, and then come back to you to speak on that. I of course, I'm going to throw it in your corner because you are indigenous healer here. Tell us about the spirituality of hair, because, you know, I remember when the weave debate was being used, you know, as a tool of misogyny, actually, to really degrade Black women, you know, and to further other us as Black women, right? I remember there was a docu that came on TV where they showed those temples in India where they collect the human hair, you know, and how many of those women are shaving their hair to cleanse themselves. You know, it's a sacrifice. And then the temples bundle this hair up and then sell it around the world, you know? So many women unknowingly, unwittingly are wearing other people's spiritual sacrifices on their heads, you know? Apart from, I mean, that's one area that I would love for you to kind of talk about the spiritual implications of that. But what are the further implications as well of hair, of this crown chakra, of, you know, what does it signify? And what does it signify? What does the fact that so many of us have been conditioned to hate this, what does that do to us spiritually too?
I mean, that goes all the way back to colonization, right? The same as the witch hunt. Take it away from them so they don't see the beauty of it. So they don't see the power in it. So they feel self-conscious about it. Whereas pre-colonial times, hair for us was a great connection with our gods, a great connection with our spiritual body, a great connection, namadlozi, our ancestors. There are spiritual connotations to, if my mother passes away, so ekanda as a sign of respect to release their spirit. There is my hair gets put into locks, because when my hair is put into locks, it makes it easier for the ancestor to be able to access me. But that red ochre that's on my head protects the crown chakra. And most of the time, you'll see that young people or even older people, initiating as a healer, they have to cover their head up, because this soft part on the top of the head, it's considered a very vulnerable aspect of our bodies as spiritual beings. And people infiltrate your gift through this very vulnerable part of the body. As you see how much we protect it when a baby is born, it's because your essence, the same as the essence of your Kundalini chakra, your essence, your chakras meet between the top of your head over here and your Kundalini chakra over here in your pelvic area. So that area, if that area is disturbed or distracted and unprotected, you're vulnerable to negative energy, kind of accessing your spirit, right? So that's the spiritual pre-colonial understanding of it. I see that we have evolved as well and adapted to, be able to wear your hair the way that you'd love to wear it, because even when you want to uphold, if you believe in that, you want to uphold that spiritual aspect of protecting your head and your hair. It's very difficult when hair has become a commodity. Now hair has become a commodity. I had an experience in 2015 where I was walking through Hillbrow, and believe it or not, a bunch of men were coming behind me for my long dreadlocks that were sitting at my bum, because they
Wow.
wanted to take me and cut off my hair to go and sell it. Yes. So I was no longer safe. So I had to, if I'm walking through the streets of Johannesburg, cover my hair like a rasta all the time. Some way or another, I had to cover my hair because they would find ways to follow me in these little corners. And I was a documenter, I was a storyteller. So I'm running in these very dangerous parts of Johannesburg and late at night also as well. But I have to make sure that my hair is one of the things that I protect. Otherwise, ngizothathwa bangunde bahambe beyodayisa inwele,
Really, people can sell that hair for up to like 2-3 grand even.
Yeah, even 20K. I mean, my hair was sitting under my bum, and people were offering me 20K for my hair. 20,000 South African rands. They were offering
now the
me.
spiritual implications, because that's your DNA.
Yes.
It's very difficult. Ngoba kusho ukuthi, that is your DNA, because that means that basically your spirit is going to come looking for you, through this DNA. Idlozi lakho lizokufuna, because it's another one of our channels. Your ancestors gonna come looking for you on somebody else's head, and that can cause psychosis. It can cause psycho-spiritual activity that people don't understand. It's a very fine line, very fine line. And I mean, when those ladies in India are making that sacrifice, as you said, it's a cleanse. They are cleansing negative energy from themselves, right? And if this negative energy is then taken from one head and put onto someone else's head, it's just lucky that there's a cap between the weave and the head. You know what I mean? Some women are not wearing it's not the same as planting the hair into your scalp. You know what I mean? At least there's a cap that's protecting, because we've left the roots inside these women's hair. And it means that if these roots are not trying to be rooted with my hair, then there's no genetic implication.
So then what is your advice then for women who do, people, men and women, who choose to wear human hair, or who choose to wear hair extensions? Is there a way that you can protect yourself spiritually from the implications of carrying another person's energy on your head?
I don't advocate for it.
Okay.
But
okay.
There are certain herbal concoctions that can be put together for cleansing that body of hair, to release that person's spiritual body from that hair, so that it just becomes an object. Yeah,
Okay.
I don't advocate for it. I've never done it before. I've never done it before for anyone. But there are ways, like every other object, sometimes that needs to be cleansed, that we release the spirit of the person from that object. The same can be done with the hair.
What I find very interesting is that there are poor women of color in India, in Pakistan, in China, who are taking their hair off. And then you've got other women of color in Africa, in Latin America, in the Caribbean, in the West, who are putting this hair on. It's like we have, and the middle people, the people in the middle are men who are making money. But our bodies are literally connected, by Luleka, the spirituality of hair.
I was actually going to say most of what Christy said about the chakras and all, and the transformation of energy. So I was going to come from an angle of how we need to be careful of who gets to access your hair, your head, basically because of the crown chakra, because of how sensitive this part is. It's actually an open portal from here, goes a figure in your Lukunya. So that's where I was going to come into. Most of the time, I do my own hair if I'm not going bald or if I don't have short hair, because this is woven in. I do my own hair, or I ask my mother and my close friends to do my hair. I would go to the salon now and again, but most of the time I'm not okay, because sometimes you would find that the conversations that the women are having on top of my head, because I also hold Nami that information, which this is my crown. This is something that needs to be very protected. So I must be very skeptical on what is being said on top of my head. So it would be things like that that would unsettle me. Although I would sometimes go to the salon, I would, but things like that, and also what's the level of trust? It's unfortunate because we live in this country that is like this, and unfortunately, as human beings, we are making it filthier and filthier. So as a result, I think who must get access to you is at least someone that you have already filtered the energy out, because this is the easiest way for umuntu ukuthi pour in their own energy through what they're talking about, or through just what they are going through. And as an empath, I know this daily struggle of just absorbing energy, sometimes unaware, I absorb energy. Now I'm moody. All of a sudden, I don't even know what's going on. Now imagine if I have a lot of people that are doing my hair. Say, for example, I want to go do braids. Sometimes you find that there are more than 3 people that are pulling your hair, ngapa na ngapa na ngapa, and they are talking, and maybe the content is just not so appetizing. Not necessarily.
And it's trauma.
Yes, trauma. Yes, thank you. So it's things like that I'm quite skeptical about, on who gets to touch my hair, and also because I have ultra-sensitive skin, which is something that I decode as some of the things that are spiritual on my own path, that there's supposed to be nothing in my head except for my own hair. But because I excuse myself and say, no, I want bigger hair that looks like mine, sometimes I go for, the other voice. But yeah, the point was that even with spirituality, Ukaka is very sensitive. This is one part that we need to protect. Yeah,
I'm loving this conversation so much. I'm so thankful for these 3 amazing poets who are with me talking about this issue. If you've just joined us, welcome to Poetry Africa. The conversation is, hair is political, ? Is hair political? I want to come over to you, Shamila, before I go to the questions in the comment section. As we are unearthing these stolen histories of people who have lived in non-binary bodies, in genderqueer bodies throughout history, in different cultures, in Black cultures, indigenous cultures, and cultures of people of color around the world, it's like our eyes are being opened. It's like a curtain is being pulled back on history, and suddenly we're seeing these bodies and these narratives that have been suppressed for such a long time. One of the really interesting things that I learned was, please forgive me, I don't know which Native American culture it is, but one of the indigenous American cultures, prior to colonialism, believed that gender was a spectrum, that there were actually 16 genders, and I mean that just, it blew my mind, so I'm imagining, how do these genders give expression to themselves? How do these genders self-identify? And what I find very interesting as well is that the further back you kind of go into the histories of particularly Black and indigenous people of color, you find that the Western heteronormative visual representation of hair is narrow. It's almost non-existent in the cultures of people of color, right? Men had braids, and people wore their hair down to their bum, and people added feathers, and people added beads, and you talk about litsoku and clay and all this, the beautiful embellishments that Black and brown people have used for our hair historically, and how that wasn't confined to gender, you know? What's your take on this? Do you think that we are heading into a realm like this? Do you think that this is where the world is returning to?
I mean, I hope so, but I'm also, I guess, realistic enough to see that it's always been, you know, a push and pull, and every progressive movement is also encountered by backlashes at the same time. But I think what you said about like gender not even being a binary in so many indigenous cultures is so true, right? I mean, I think the Yoruba in Nigeria had a pre-colonial society that was organized by totally different categories, but gender did not play a role, right? Like did not even really matter. I think I know, and early on I was speaking about like my exploration of like my body hair and how I really tried to like, or still trying to, I think it's something I've only learned recently, tap into, you know, Iranian or other indigenous ways of understanding body hair and also gender, therefore, right? And there's this really interesting book by an amazing Iranian scholar, Afzane Najmabadi, who wrote a book titled Women with Mustaches and Men Without Beards, right?
Oh,
and
wow.
that is something that has existed in Iran, I think in the 17th to 18th century, before European influence was really dominant in the region, right? And it wasn't just accepted for women to have the mustache, right, or to have really bushy eyebrows, or, you know, other expressions of body hair, but it was celebrated also, right? It wasn't just something that was being accepted, but it was literally, I think there was a queen also who was well known for her mustache. So tapping into these histories, I think, is really liberating, but at the same time so difficult, because I feel like so much has been erased. I feel very removed from certain things as well, because, you know, I'm not living in Iran. I'm here in Europe. Language is a barrier. So it is like, yeah, it feels good to know that there's this wealth of wisdom and knowledge, you know, that's always been there and that is still there, but it's also difficult to sometimes see how it has been transformed, and how, I mean, Iran right now is one of the most rigidly gendered societies in the world, right? And I think what we're seeing currently with the uprisings of women and of queer people and of trans people in Iran against the forced hijab, the headscarf, right, that the government and the so-called institution of the morality police is imposing on people. I think that is also something that really, I mean, it's a very interesting moment, because just last month there was a Kurdish woman who was murdered in Tehran because she wasn't really wearing her headscarf properly, right?
Exactly.
That the morality police basically took her and arrested her, and then she died at the hands of them. And that unleashed these nationwide protests that are still ongoing, right? And it is not just about hair, obviously. It is about much more. There's an underlying socioeconomic crisis, you know, the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, the religious, you know, dictatorship, basically. But the hair has become this catalyzer, basically, where people are saying, well, we want to choose whether we can wear the hijab or not, right? But we don't. It does so much to you. And I think, I mean, I can't speak to that because I've never lived in Iran and I've never been forced to wear the hijab. So what we have here, but at the same time, I can only imagine how, especially as a genderqueer, non-binary person, how it must feel to be constantly wearing this thing that, you know, indicates that you are something that you're not, right?
Yes.
I mean, at the same time, we also see, and I'll end on that, but we see that in Europe, there's this backlash or very reductionist right-wing understanding of these current developments, because Europeans or the media here would predominantly say, oh, look at the women in Iran not wanting to wear the headscarf, whereas Muslim women in Europe are actually, you know, wanting to wear the hijab, and it's this symbol of alleged backwardness, you know, and people are saying that this is, you know, they're not properly integrated, and all of these very problematic assumptions. But at the same time, like, both of them basically come down to choice, right? And I think that is what often is being misunderstood. Like, it's not how you choose to wear your head, if you choose to show your head or not, whether for religious reasons or otherwise, shouldn't be determined by anyone, or shouldn't be dictated by anyone, but it is basically only up to you. Yeah.
You've outlined it so well. Thank you for the way that you've explained it. And of course, I mean, we stand in solidarity with the women, with the trans people, with the queer folk of Iran in this moment. I mean, the protests that have been happening for the last couple of weeks are unprecedented, as you said, catalyzed by the state murder of a young woman for wearing her hair out. And I mean, it's just so interesting how the hijab has become, especially in the West, you know, this trigger for Islamophobia, for rampant Islamophobia. So a woman wearing a hijab in Germany or in France or, you know, or Northern Europe can be abused in the streets, can be ostracized, can live an experience where she's constantly forced to justify herself because of how she gives expression to her religion and her cultural identity, you know. And then on the flip side, in Iran, if you are not wearing that, you can literally be killed by the state. And I mean, what's also interesting for me is to see some of the images of how Iranian women were expressing themselves through fashion and through, you know, like 40 years ago. You know, I mean, it's like the change in the country because of conservative religious government. You know, I mean, it literally impacts every facet of the lives of women and queer folk. And these are people who in their lifetime knew a completely different life. So, I mean, it can happen overnight, you know? And as we see the right wing around the world rising, we are in a moment where, as you said rightly, because of, you know, we watching our societies kind of collapse in the fallout of COVID-19, we are seeing unprecedented kind of economic crises happening all over the world. We see it also in South Africa as well. COVID has exposed the fault lines of our societies as individual countries and also globally, you know, and the right wing is capitalizing on this opportunity. We could wake up and find right wing governments all over the world rising. And it's also in reaction to the empowerment of marginalized people and marginalized bodies. The right wing is mobilizing and organizing globally because Black people are rising, queer people are rising, women are rising, poor people are rising. I just want to take some of the comments that have come in from the audience and really thank people for watching. We appreciate you. Karen Mutwahai says, Christy, I agree 100% with your mom on not cutting your hair. I grew up with our dad cutting our hair cheesecop, and we are 2 girls with 3 brothers. My mom was hurting but had no power over this Tswana man. Love heavy hair jeans, not giving me privilege. And then Ntombi Musonda says, Fontanella is something we were taught from birth as sacred. So you've raised a lot of issues, you've raised issues that are really touching people. And I'm glad that Poetry Africa is recording all of these discussions to remain up online as an archive. So please, you know, share the links with your friends, carry on commenting underneath the links. We have 10 minutes left and I want to give everybody an opportunity to speak about the imagined future. You know, what is the future that you dream of? What is the expression that you still want to give birth to, that you still want to show the world, or that you still want to see in the world? You know, again, the topic is hair is political. I'm going to come over to you, Christy.
Sure. Hey, I guess I've really enjoyed seeing the rise of Black women just allowing themselves, you know, like your Luleka Mhlanzi, you know, being very intentional about allowing herself. So many all over social media, you'll see people are going back into you know, having a choice, you know, and I think that's just it, having a choice to be able to live it the way that you want to live it, for what it means to you, you know, not what it's expected to mean to you, not what is forced upon you, you know. It's been wonderful watching the surge, and I really I pray that we no longer move backwards anymore. You know, we don't find ourselves in positions where we're having to sacrifice parts of ourselves and leave ourselves at the door all the time, you know, because, you know, that's been the beauty of watching people stand up for what it is that they believe in. The fact that they can show up holistically, purely the way that they are, without needing to navigate a space in order to fit into the space. So I just, my advice is carry on, honey. Continue, carry on.
I think we're also kind of at the creative edge of this way of expressing, because we're artists, because we're creatives. If we were working in corporate, if we were working in government, if we were diplomats, it would we? I don't know if we would be as free. The creatives. I mean, as much as for all that we go through, like we have the ability, we have more abilities to be able to give free expression, a chance in our lives in ways that other people cannot, and I think that that's something that, so go ahead.
The O level, I've seen differently in those spaces, the diplomat spaces, the corporate spaces, people are actually fighting for the right to be able to say, I'm going to wear my hair the way that I want to wear it. It doesn't affect the way that I show up to the job. It doesn't affect my output. It doesn't affect the quality of the work that I bring to the table, because that is what you hired me for, not the way my hair looks. I think about that advert that came out a couple of years, was it during COVID now? That black lady that came in wearing her natural hair, and she went into all of her clan names. And by going into her clan,
I remember that ad. That was such a stunning ad.
Of what her bloodline carries. Already these people get to see the value of this human being outside of defining them according to the corporate standard, Drops the mic, babes. Drops the mic.
Drop the mic. Drop the mic. So we should be able to bring our full selves wherever we are. Shamila, what is your imagined future?
I mean, I'd like to echo, I think, what everybody said, but also I'm thinking around choice, right? And how obviously, like, we should all be choose however we want to look and attach whatever meaning we want to attach to it, instead of having these imposed meanings. But I'm also thinking how choice is sometimes, there's this reductionist understanding of it, and how the systems behind, that inform our choice, like the underlying systems, are often not looked at. So I think we touched a bit on the beauty industry, right? And all these creams and waxing and razors and all of that, like we struggle.
Relaxing and all this,
we struggle to actually undo all this shame and internalize things, because that still exists, right? And because it's constantly imposed on us. So I think, I'd like to end with this quote of, they're also a poet and phenomenal person who is doing a lot of education work online, Alok Vaid Menon. And it's an excerpt from a poem called Real.
Oh, I love that.
Yes.
I follow them on Instagram. Beautiful work.
Extremely beautiful. And they say in this poem, I think it's only an excerpt, but it says, my arm hair is a built-in blanket. My beard is a natural contour. My chest hair is a crop top. My body is so fabulous, it accessorizes itself. My body is so beautiful that beauty it spills out of me. It cannot be contained by skin.
Oh, I love that. My body accessorizes itself. Thank you for that. Before I come to you for your final word, Lulama, I see we've got one more comment in the chat. No, we're just being reminded that we've got 5 minutes left. Sorry, Lulaika, take it away, my love.
Okay, thank you, Jamila, for the poem. That was beautiful.
Oh, stunning.
Yes. I don't imagine a lot. I imagine a kinder and an empathetic society. That's where I'm beginning. And liberty, liberty, liberty. I'm not asking for people to like everyone, to like everything. but I'm just asking you to come from a point of empathy. Which, okay, this is how you look. If I don't like it, it's fine. There's not much effort for me to shun you down or to discourage you on about yourself. That effort is the no for me. So I'm imagining liberty. Like if I'm rocking whatever it is that I'm rocking and it makes sense to me, can I just be lit? To just do that? Can I just be?
I love that. I love that. Last question, because we still have a couple of minutes, before we have to close. And I'm enjoying talking to the three of you so much. I read a quote online, I think it's been doing the rounds on a number of different social media platforms, but basically it says that the adult that you have become is the person that the child in you would have needed to protect them. So basically you have become an adult who is a version of what your childhood self would have needed to protect them. So my question then to the three of you is, if your 12-year-old self had to see you now, what would they think about your hair?
Ooh. Girl, you look stunning.
I'll start. At the age of 12, I was 12 years old in 1991. That was like, I was neck deep in relaxers. I begged my mother for a relaxer at the age of 5. My mother has never relaxed her hair. She always kept her hair short. She was very Black conscious, but because of the influence of media, I wanted a relaxer. I was policing my hair hardcore at the age of 12. I think 12-year-old me would have been astounded by how I look. 12-year-old me would have eyes this big, looking at me wearing my hair like this for the last 24 years. Maybe it would have made 12-year-old me braver. Maybe it would have made 12-year-old me feel more affirmed. But I think if 12-year-old me, with the way that I remember my consciousness being at that time, 12-year-old me it would have shocked the shit out of me to see that I would be this big wearing my hair like this.
Precisely.
Shamila?
I think 12-year-old me was very much thinking in their narrow, like, oh no, this is how I look and this is how I've always looked, and so therefore this is how I'm gonna look. So I guess 12-year-old me would have been very also surprised, I guess, but also maybe fascinated by, oh, okay, this seems to be possible.
Yeah. Cool, very cool. Christy?
Same, hey? I think 12-year-old me would be very impressed with the fact that I've given myself options to not define myself to specific things that were put upon me, but I went and found things that mean something to me outside of what was put upon me. So she'd be very impressed with, options, baby, options.
Options, baby. Luleka.
I think 12-year-old me would be terrified by the journey it took for me to get here, but also inspired that this is where we are at this point.
Oh, Christy, Luleka, Shamila, it has been my absolute pleasure to speak to you this afternoon. This conversation has been enriching. It's been enlightening. It's been radical. I love the fact that it's like radical Black conscious feminist politics up there. Boom!
Yeah.
The world must deal. And we're not going backward, we're going forward. So if you're scared of this, Shem, you're really, really in trouble. Share this with a trans, queer, Black woman, brown person who you love. Share this conversation with a young person who you know is struggling with identity issues and issues of self-affirmation, self-love. Share this with students who need affirmation against the onslaught of beauty standards that are driving them up the wall from mainstream media, even their phones. Share this with everybody who needs this. Thank you so much. Rock on, keep writing, keep pushing boundaries, keep doing your radical work. I'm honored to be in the same space as you.
Thank you. It's an honor for
Thank
me.
you, Lebo.
Poetry Africa. Here is
See you in
political
Durban.
question mark. We'll see you on the flip side. Share the link to this conversation widely and comment at the bottom. We'll keep the link live. Thank you so much for participating, and have a beautiful, beautiful rest of the day and rest of the week. We'll see you at Poetry Africa. We've got live events happening this week, the whole week in Durban, and there's plenty of online events happening, so you can join us from anywhere you are in the world and participate in these amazing discussions. I feel so privileged to be a poet at this time in my life and to share this space with such incredible voices. Have a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful day. Thank you so much.